تكن في المحبة فلست بشيء. المحبة تصبر وترفق، المحبة لا تعرف الحسد، المحبة تصبر وترفق، المحبة لا تعرف الحسد ولا التفاخر ولا الكبرياء ولا تظن السوء. لا تفرح بالظلم بل تفرح بالحق، المحبة تصفح عن.
The Voice of Charity programs are proudly sponsored by.
عشو ممكن تحصل بس $99. $99 فيك تشوف مايسات ل3 أشهر مع بوكس وكارد، وكمان بتحصل على مايسات جو مجانا لتحضر على أي جهاز بدك إياه، شو ما بدك وإمتى ما بدك، كلن بس $99 بدون ما تشترك، وفيك تكمل أو توقف لما بدك. اتصل هلأ على 1-300-976-481.
SSI's multicultural foster care program. SSI does more than match children with foster carers. They create connections that honor culture, religion, and identity. Learn more about becoming a foster carer at ssi.org.au/fostercare or call 1-800-299-447 because every child deserves to feel at home.
برنامج الرعاية البديلة برنامج متعدد الثقافات تابع لمنظمة SSI. بالإضافة لربط الأطفال بأولياء الرعاية، بتسعى ال SSI لخلق مجالات للإضاءة على الثقافة والهوية والتقاليد. لتعرف المزيد حول الانضمام لبرنامج الرعاية البديلة، زور موقع ssi.org.au/fostake أو الاتصال على الرقم 1-800-299-447 لأنه كل طفل بيستحق أنه يشعر أنه ببيته.
The Voice of Charity would like to thank our current sponsors for their ongoing support. And if you would like to become one of our sponsors, please contact the Voice of Charity office on 9625 6111 or email us on voc@voc.org.au.
علمتينا المحبة، سمعتينا حد علمتينا المحبة، لا تخافي من هبوب الريح، عن حبك ما رح ننسيح، لا تخافي من هبوب الريح، عن حبك ما رح ننسيح، صوتك من صوت المسيح، تبقي صوت المحبة.
In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic Toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity. And welcome back to another week on the Catholic Toolbox, the art of practical Catholicism. I'm your host and founder, George Manassa, here as we equip you with practical tools to live your faith in our modern world of today. And this week, I welcome to the studio, Gregory Tondys.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
I was thinking of a name for you, the musician, Gregory Tondys, to introduce you in that way. But today we're continuing our discussion on sacred music. We're continuing. We had a great discussion last time.
We did, yes. We ran out of time.
We ran out of time. There was so much to discuss.
It was.
And I encourage everybody listening here to go back to the podcast with sacred music discussed after the Second Vatican Council with Gregory Tondys, organist and musician, and dive into our discussion. But we're continuing today, and we actually started the episode before with under Pope Francis.
Yes, correct.
And since then,
we have a new Pope.
We have a new Pope.
We do.
And
Leo the 14th.
Leo the 14th.
Yes.
And he's proven to be a very, very talented musician himself.
Well, yes. Well, just within the what's he been Pope for a month or close to?
Probably just over a month.
Just over a month?
Yeah.
He's already started a craze of, what do you call it, singing with the Pope, which the Pontifical Institute is starting to put out, videos, because I think one of the first things the Pope did when publicly was on the Sunday after he was made Pope was sing the Regina Caeli, which had never been done. It had always just been recited by previous popes, including Benedict XVI, and he just decided to sing the Regina Caeli, and he just sang it, and he's been singing all sorts of things, and he's not scared of singing parts of the Mass. He can hold, he could actually sing what's written down, and so there's sort of a little bit of
He sounds amazing.
Yeah.
He sounds amazing. Just when he sang that Regina Caeli, it was absolutely phenomenal. Because I know Pope Francis, he couldn't sing.
No, that's
never
correct.
Used to sing.
Yes.
But it's refreshing to hear, a Pope sing.
Though Pope Francis did sing the Regina Caeli very early, not the Salve Regina, very early on when he went to St Mary Major's.
Yes.
After he was made Pope, he went there and he did start to sing the Regina, the Salve Regina. But yes, he did. He wasn't a singer, and he struggled, and he was very conscious of that.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of priests who are conscious that they're not good singers and they're always scared. Don't be. If you need help, go out. There are plenty of musicians that will certainly help you, show you what to do. Maybe even there are lots of videos even online these days of how to sing parts of the Mass. Even just the in the name of the Father and the Son, and the Lord be with you and with your spirit. So those priests who are sort of self-conscious about that, don't be. Leave it to the Holy Spirit, and learn those parts of the Mass to sing and things like that. So and it's refreshing to see that the new Pope is doing that. He's singing those parts which the
Kyriale that we call.
Yes, yeah.
The Kyrie, the Gloria.
But also too, there is in a lot of parishes, unfortunately, there are priests who are scared to sing. So you do sing the Kyrie, you do sing the Gloria, but the priest won't sing anything. So it's and one of the important things, and in the liturgical documents, it talks about the responses of the Mass. So the priest, singing the Lord be with you, and the people responding, and with your spirit, or Dominus vobiscum et spiritu tuo, and stuff like that, being sung. We're quite lucky. Bishop Long always sings
here in the diocese
in this diocese of Parramatta.
Yeah.
The same thing with Sydney diocese. Archbishop Fisher will do the exact same. And I just encourage lots of priests, old and young, to don't be scared of it. There are plenty of musicians out there that can definitely help you and support you in learning those little things. It's maybe just adding one little response and versical response in a Mass, say maybe once a month for them to learn, and and then, you know, over a year you've got a nice repertoire. So, you know, on the greater feast you're able to sing, you know, different parts of the Mass to make the Mass more solemn, as, you know, what the liturgical documents, you know, asked us to do. So yeah.
If we hearken back to the Second Vatican Council,
Yes.
and we love Vatican II in terms of music.
Yes.
It did a great job, especially
Well,
in the constitutional documents.
In some ways, yeah, it gave us more variety.
Yeah.
Though, I mean, I predominantly work within the what do you call it, the traditional rite.
The traditional Latin Mass.
Which yeah, there's a lot of music there as well. But I guess for musicians and even for priests, with the newer Mass, the Novus Ordo, it gives them flexibility. With the traditional rite, it's whether the priest can sing or not. He's got to sing certain things. He doesn't have a choice.
He doesn't get an option.
He doesn't get a choice of what he can sing or he can't sing. The same thing with the choir. The choir doesn't have an option of, you know, can we sing this piece or not sing this piece? We've got to sing it. So I guess the nice thing, there is that flexibility within the Novus Ordo. You know, whether you don't have to sing everything. You could just, you know, sing, you know, those parts that you do know and things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I guess that there is that positive, that is the positive side, but also I've seen the negative side of that, of because the liturgy doesn't force you to sing anything, then you do get places, priests and parishes where they won't sing anything.
Yeah.
Because they won't make that effort. Or they're scared to make that effort, maybe more than, yeah, or they're just scared to do it because, you know, they don't know what to do or things like that.
It's a matter of confidence, and I think stepping outside the world of the cathedrals that are very well equipped musically.
Yep.
Let's go into the suburban parish life.
Yeah.
And I know we discussed this in the previous episode.
Yeah, we did. Yes.
That in suburban parishes, then they're not equipped
Correct,
as well
yeah.
as cathedrals and as many other parishes are that are more traditional, such as the Latin Mass, or parishes that have musicians and choir directors that understand the liturgy. And you gave some practical tools about how we could actually very much equip the ordinary parish priest and people to start something small and build up from there. Now, that seems to be the challenge of many dioceses. The average parish isn't singing. And it's the same here. And we've had a previous episode where we've discussed sacred music with Father Peter Williams. And he did say something very interesting. That was, many people think every parish before the Second Vatican Council had a great music tradition. It wasn't the case.
Certainly not in the English-speaking world.
Yeah.
Definitely in Europe, it was a little bit more. It happened a lot more.
Yeah.
You will go into places and you'll see, you know, these wonderful library of music that was once performed in the parish and things like that, but has sort of died away over time.
Yeah.
Though it's been kept going a little bit more because also it's connected with tradition and culture in some countries, say like France, or maybe less France, maybe more like Germany or Poland or you know, Croatia and places like that, where the tradition and culture sort of interconnected with sacred music. You will see it sort of still surviving, but definitely not in this country, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It wasn't the case, though. There was a movement that started, and thanks to people like the, you know, Josephites and things like that.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
And some of the, I think, Christian Brothers and things like that, where they started to implement, you know, musicum sacrum and things like that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it ended very quickly. You know, the vernacular came in. Other types of music came in, even though the church kept on reiterating about chant and sacred polyphony. That sort of got pushed to the wayside, unfortunately.
So just to summarise for our audience, what kinds of music
are suitable for Mass?
Okay.
I mean, many people have their different preferences,
True.
guitars, drums.
So-
Even I've seen and experienced stereos. You know, people would just click a stereo on Bluetooth and play something and turn it off.
I guess
what's suitable for Mass?
so. In the Vatican II documents, Sacrosanctum Concilium, and then in all documents post-council, also in letters by John Paul II, Benedict XVI, even Pope Francis, they talk about liturgical or sacred music, and they always talk about Gregorian chant being the pride of place, that has the first place within the church.
Yeah.
And then when it talks about musical instruments, it talks about the organ as being the musical instrument of the church. But then it does say that other forms and other instruments can be used to enhance the liturgy. But still, that those forms of music are to be held in high esteem. They're to be safeguarded. They're to be preserved. They're supposed to be taught and used within the.
Why do
the
you
church.
think that's the case, rather than playing contemporary music?
Look, I guess this is a thing that's happened throughout the church's history.
Yeah.
Other music has crept in. We had sort of opera style music came in, and the church has always, even when polyphonies started to be used in the church, there was that talk of, what about the chant? Isn't the chant? So the church has always, throughout history, when other sort of styles of music have crept in to the church, some have stayed, some have, been lost to time, but the church has always seen the chant as being the pure form, so to speak, of sacred music.
There's just something about it.
Also, there's an unwritten tradition that the chant is divinely inspired.
Yeah, okay. It was written by monks over time.
Also, one of the things with Gregorian chant, unlike other music, we know that, this piece was written by Palestrina, or that piece was written by Bach or Mozart or whatever.
Okay, composer.
With the chant,
yeah,
we don't know who the composers are.
Wow.
There are only half a dozen out of probably a repertoire of probably millions of pieces of chant, and there's probably is literally millions of pieces of chant. We only know a handful of composers because it was connected specifically to a particular time. And even when that happened, it was seen as that those people were divinely inspired, that they just came out with that chant. They didn't sit down and sort of, let's compose something. It was just, a divine, a thing that
through their prayer life,
whatever.
They wrote something.
The Gloria Laus for Holy Palm Sunday was divinely inspired. That the bishop who came out with that was I think, if I remember correctly, the story, he was imprisoned, and a procession went, and he just came out with that beautiful piece of chant, and so we say that yes, but he didn't see that he composed it. It was divinely inspired by the Holy Spirit. So I guess that's partly the difference where we see chant and say other compositions, because we see the other compositions as that's a work by Palestrina. Even though Palestrina himself may have said yes, it was divinely inspired, whatever. Yeah. And even Bach was, though not a Catholic, he saw his music as being very much
maybe attuned to his prayer life, possibly.
But they still attributed that music to themselves.
He manufactured it.
That's correct.
That's the reality.
While the chant was never seen that way. It was seen as something as being,
organically
and given to us through a holy and sacred and talented musically monk or whatever. So, and that's why we don't know who wrote those pieces, and that's where that tradition, the unwritten tradition, is that the chant is divinely inspired by the Holy Ghost, and that I think that's one of the reasons why the Church, throughout the ages up until even the current age, Pope Francis mentioned about chant being the important, and all modern pieces should look to the chant as being the paradigm of what how music should be formed liturgically. And I think, as we mentioned in the previous episode, also our chant has a pedigree, or it follows on from the temple worship as well.
Yeah.
Our Lord would have used certain modes and things like that
of singing,
or even melodies that we still have. There are musicologists that have looked at some of the more ancient Jewish melodies of the Psalms and Lamentations, and we find that they match up with our Roman melodies as well. So
in the Gregorian chant.
In the Gregorian chant,
wow.
yes. So
it's a matter of some music, and what I love about the faith in general, and especially tradition, doctrine, and in this context music, is that when we say it's organically developed, it's developed by itself. It has no composer that just came together on ChatGPT and wrote it himself.
We don't know where it came from, because we know it predates.
Yeah.
It goes back to the temple. So where did it come from in the temple?
So they must have just kept singing it.
That's correct, yeah.
And then they maybe through the Christians in Europe and Spain, they must have, and the monks who carried the musical tradition, they must have just sang their daily prayers in certain modes and
that's correct.
And ways, and it just gets carried and maybe adapted.
Yes,
and sing it a certain way, and people just carry it down.
That's correct, yeah.
Wow.
I have listened to academic recordings in regards to the Psalms and the Lamentations in regards to the Jewish tradition and the early Christian or Catholic tradition.
Yeah.
And of course, the style of singing may have changed over the things, but basically you can see the outline of the basic notes. Maybe the rhythms have slightly changed and things like that, but it basically is there, and they are similar, or in some cases I would say even exactly the same melody. So
it's just absolutely beautiful that Gregorian chant is the preferred music in the Roman Rite.
Correct, Roman Rite, yes.
For the church.
Correct.
Now, other rites probably have their own musical tradition.
Yes, that's correct, yes.
We'll have to, those are episodes for another time.
I'm not necessarily expert in other...
in other rites.
As we were actually quickly talking before the episode that I was sort of interested, somebody sort of mentioned about Aramaic chant and stuff like that, which I have no idea. So I've just recently sort of been digging into and who still uses, the chant in the ancient Aramaic, liturgical chants that are still sort of, and there's only just a handful of people around the world that still keep that tradition going, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and I can't.
It's beautiful.
I can't find anything like musically written out. Not that I can read Aramaic or Arabic or any of those Eastern scripts, but yeah, unfortunately.
But it'd be beautiful to discover how other rites' musical tradition developed organically from the beginning, from the Jewish times.
And I'm sure, as we know, there will be a connection between those chants and the chants that we use in the West, in the Roman Rite, because their origins would be of the same. They would be of the temple.
Yeah.
So musically, the origin of the chants, even though they've sort of gone out on two separate branches, will definitely have a single come from the the single.
It would be interesting,
thing.
Yeah. I mean, because if you look at old Roman chant,
yes,
It sounds very Eastern.
It does,
Eastern or Arabic.
Because over the years, the tonality in the West has sort of changed, where now we have what's called equal temperament. So the distance between each interval is exactly the same thing. Well, originally that wasn't the case, and so the Eastern in the East, whether it's the Middle East or even in Asia, say India, where they still keep those modal and traditions going, that the intervals are not exact. So, but even within Western music, that equal temperament is only a recent introduction. You know, we know that Bach in his Well-Tempered Clavier was working on trying to create some sort of thing. That's only the 1700s.
Okay, wow.
So, so we sort of have to remember that. A lot of times we forget that a lot of the changes that have happened in Western music have only really happened in more modern times. When you sort of...
After the 60s.
After the 60s. The 1660s. but, yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, when sort of people, you go, well, it's sort of quite... Because music goes for thousands of years. The chant exists for, we can literally say it goes back to the beginning of Christ. Yeah. So and as we know that it predates that, so it's more than 2,000 years old, the chant. So
it's absolutely amazing. Yeah. It's absolutely amazing. And there's so much to discuss, essentially. You don't know where to start anymore to do with music. We got too excited last time.
Yeah.
We went over the hour, but I want to talk about just the physiological, psychological effects. And this could be, I don't know if somebody's undertaken further research into this area, but the cognitive effect it could of Gregorian chant on the prayer of an individual, as opposed to contemporary music.
Yeah, well, I think I might have slightly mentioned this in the last episode. Yeah. There have been research done. It's just by musicologists in general, not necessarily by church musicians. Okay. Yeah. Where they've taken taken music to tribal people. And there's one group that sort of has popped up quite frequently on YouTube, were people from India, where they've never heard any other Western music other than their own within their own
They're
culture.
Objective.
And they've been subjected to Gregorian chant. They've been subjected to things like that. I think they played Allegri's Miserere. Then they played other pieces by Mozart and things like that.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting to watch them. That as soon as they heard Gregorian chant, and they heard Renaissance polyphony, in this regards, it was Allegri's Miserere.
Yeah.
Not even knowing or understanding, and nobody told them what the music was or whatever. They were just listening to it. They knew it had to do with something outside of this world. Wow. It was something spiritual.
Wow.
It wasn't just music to, that you could, clap along and it was fun and happy. They through the way the music presented itself, they knew that it was something spiritual or something to do with God, or in them, because I think many of them were pagan, so that they had no understanding necessarily of a Christian deity, but they just the music in itself conveyed that it was beyond, it was something more than this world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that has been done, and I was speaking to another musicologist recently and said that somebody has been doing something similar in Africa as well.
Interesting.
So there have been, and it's actually quite nice that it's been done not by church musicians, so it's not seen as being prejudiced.
Yeah.
It's just
an objective.
It's just an objective, and every time that all of those people have seen that it's been something, not just that it's been something spiritual about it. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not conclusive proof, and I'm sure there's room
that's true. Yes.
for further studies. And we're not trying to approach this from a bias angle, but we're just trying to see that this music, in the context of the Latin Rite, has developed organically. And from my experience, the experience of so many other people, in the sensus fidelium, or the sense of the faithful, or the experience of the faithful, is that when you hear something like polyphony sung, you hear, a Kyrie 11, or Allegris Miserere sung, in the context of a liturgy, with the liturgical action taking place, and the incense, the smoke, the movement of the servers, the order, the structure, it's just heavenly, with that being sung in the background, as opposed to more contemporary music.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things in regards to chant. It was never a popular music. It didn't come from popular music.
It's not meant to be popular.
No, but I'm just saying, other music has since, and even to a degree, classical music and stuff. Some of it was popular music and then used within the liturgy, say Mozart or whatever.
Yeah.
This is something that's never been a popular thing and then used for liturgical use. Say, as in modern music, as Come As You Are or something like that, where you can see that it's a secular influence on the music. Well, the chant has never been a secular thing. It's always been a religious music. So it's always been apart from normal music, which would have had rhythm and would have had dance and stuff like that. Even when going to ancient cultures and things like that.
Yeah.
So this chant doesn't follow that
social,
doesn't follow that sort of construct in regards to that it's something it's something quite different. And I mean, even movies, documentaries and things like that will use Gregorian chant and will use polyphony when they want to portray something sacred or something like that.
Yeah.
So even in modern society, even a secular group of people will use those because they see that portrays, that sums up, that's the essence of what sacred music should sound like. So
absolutely,
absolutely. And we hear that time and time again. You'll be sort of listening to an ad or something like that, and they'll sort of have monks or something there, and then you'll hear Gregorian chant sort of wafting in the background, sort of, because that's what sacred music is supposed to be. So even from those who are not religious at all, it's sort of it has that.
It's beautiful, because the way I see it is music for each context. We're applying music to each relevant context. In sacred liturgy, over time, organically, chant, and then polyphony and we'll talk about the other modern developments in sacred music. When I have a party with friends, at my place, I play lounge music. Yeah. With a bit of the saxophone.
It's sort of light jazz or something
like
that.
Light jazz and everything else, and a bit of piano. Or you're at a bar or you're at a concert. Every single context should have the appropriate music to clothe the context that you're in.
Correct, yeah.
That's how we see it.
Yeah. And that's what we normally do.
Yeah.
Within the thing. But it's not necessarily what we always do liturgically, unfortunately.
But that can be improved.
It can be, yeah.
It can be improved.
And it opened up a thing of also the church having different seasons, like Advent, Christmas, Lent, Easter. We're back into ordinary time now.
So it has a different theme.
It has music. Musically, there can be different themes, and there are different themes.
Requiems, as well.
And you see that within the music. For say Christmas, it tends to be a little bit more upbeat. There are two types in Christmas. It can be very contemplative, sort of looking at the incarnation, sort of that really big theological side of things, and then there's also the joyous side of things, and you'll see that within the chant.
Yeah.
You know, the Poenatus and stuff like that, where it's a little bit more bouncier.
Yeah.
In the way that it plays with the rhythms of the text of the music.
Yeah.
And then so the music within the church changes, and recently a parish musician was sort of talking to me, and I sort of said, well, you know, we weren't talking about chant, we were just talking about normal hymns and things like that, of, you know, use the different hymns for the different seasons. So, you know, use hymns for Advent that talks about the preparation and the coming of our Lord at Christmas. You know, at Christmas, sing all the different Christmas carols that there are. You know, and then at Lent, sing all those Lenten things. You know, preparing us for that. You know, for the Passion and things like that. And he says, "Oh, but you know, my parish, they just sing the same hymns. You know, all year round. Doesn't matter what season it is, whether it's Lent or Advent or Christmas. It's the same. It's pretty much the same hymns, which is sort of quite sad in some ways.
But it's very interesting. What does it take when we look at a different parish? What does it take to take an ordinary parish that's singing the same hymns all year round?
Yeah.
Does it have a liturgical, musical
I
choir or group?
I think the reason why
What can we do?
I think the reason why that has occurred in some places.
Let's talk about that before we go into that.
I'm not going to name names. There are places within Parramatta Diocese where I know that does happen. And
I think within everywhere in the world.
And I think one of the reasons that definitely I know of in those cases is that they haven't had people that, one, understand liturgical music. Secondly, haven't had anybody that has any liturgical music education.
Yeah.
And competent musicians.
Yeah. It's hard to find.
And then of course the fourth thing is, once you fall into that rut, everybody's always scared to come out of it, because you know they're always scared of what the congregation will say. And I'm not saying that you just change everything overnight. It's you just do one small thing, or you add in a couple of Advent hymns one year, and then the next year you add another thing, 3, and then over a period of say 5 years, you've changed it. Then you're only singing Advent hymns in Advent, for instance, and So, but I think that's the main reason, is because of we don't have experienced musicians, unfortunately. And
there aren't enough.
There aren't enough. And in some ways it's a little bit sad, because I know that this diocese of Parramatta do put out workshops.
Excellent work, yeah.
And
the cathedral.
Through the cathedral and the cathedral musicians.
And you have the choir, which is your choir.
Yeah, but I know they do workshops, and, it would be nice if, maybe more parishes could support it, send people, to these workshops for, for learning education. I mean,
I think that's a struggle internationally.
I think I've harped on this before, that we place a big thing about making sure that acolytes are properly trained, and readers or lectors are properly trained, and they've got to go to different courses. Musicians should be the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But they're sort of treated as a separate thing, of that. They're poor musicians. Just let them do what they can do, instead of trying to offer the ability of educating them.
But I think there's a lot of great work.
And they have an important. The musicians have a lot of important work within the the liturgy. So I think it is very important. And the Vatican document, Sacrosanctum Concilium, mentions that each diocese should have a school that teaches music for the diocese. So that's one of the things within the document that sort of mentions that it's one of the things that unfortunately does get neglected,
or can be hard to do. But we can always, we're evolving. We can always add things and change and improve.
Yeah.
But
look,
it does take skill.
It does.
To sing.
And
more skill than to serve.
True.
Objectively.
That's exactly right.
Somebody who's served and
And I think in the
be
past
involved in
it's been just
liturgy.
like, oh, if you can strum the guitar, that's good enough. But it's not. It needs a little bit more than that. You know,
Yeah.
there's
But it doesn't mean that if you can't sing, chant yet, or polyphony,
it doesn't mean that
you
you-
can't start.
That's exactly right.
Little baby steps.
With our at the moment we've just formed a scholar,
Yeah.
a men's scholar,
Tell us about that. Tell us a little bit about that, and give us give him a shout out.
Okay, so the traditional mass at
Diocese of Parramatta,
for Diocese
Latin
of Parramatta,
Mass,
the FSSP,
Fraternity
the
of
Fraternity of
St.
St. Peter. So their apostolate here in Parramatta. Our Sunday masses that we have are at Blacktown at the Croatian Centre there. They've got a big hall,
Catholic Church.
and Catholic Church, which they allow us to have mass there.
Very grateful.
Yeah, we're very grateful. And previously, we've had two choirs. One choir has had its origins in Liverpool Parish and St Mary's Parish.
Yeah. Another great example of an effort within the parish context to create sacred music, which is an excellent example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I won't go into there are things that happened and they weren't welcome. Sort of.
Yeah.
I think
So-
but we won't go into that. So they ended up singing at the traditional mass because the fraternity were looking for musicians for this.
choir,
for this, I mean, if many people know the traditional mass, they've probably heard of Lewisham, which has a wonderful musical tradition. So they attract lots of very talented musicians to the Archdiocese of Sydney. But here in the Parramatta, it was always a bit of a sort of difficulty to find some musicians. And myself and another gentleman, Mr. Daniel Nekic, who lives within this diocese, he's a wonderful musician, went to the conservatorium. We both offered our talents to sort of help the fraternity, and probably about 10 years ago or something like that.
10 years, yeah.
We formed a choir. We had, when Mass was still out at Mulgoa, in the little church in Mulgoa.
Yeah.
Within a couple of months, we outgrew the church. There were just too many people attending Mass. Different things, and we've had COVID and things like that. And we've moved to Blacktown, which is much bigger space, so we can fit a lot more people.
A growing
in there.
community. Yeah.
It is, yes.
Very growing community.
And also through COVID, we had another choir form to sort of cover the online masses. And so we had two mixed choirs doing sacred polyphony and Gregorian chant.
Yeah.
The one thing that we didn't have was an all-male scholar chant choir, which is also mentioned within the Vatican documents, of having a male scholar, which I guess that tradition goes back to the monks in choir singing the chant and stuff like that. And so in recent times we decided to just have the one mixed choir, which specialises in sacred polyphony, and then the other choir of men, which will specialise in Gregorian chant.
Beautiful.
Which is being led by Daniel Nekic, who's running that.
Excellent.
I'm also a member of the scholar.
These are good practical examples of what can be done.
Yes.
Even with, if there aren't many musically trained people.
I was going to say, apart from Daniel and myself within the scholar, all the other people have no musical training or background.
Yeah.
We're teaching them from scratch.
How to read notes.
That's exactly right.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
Listening to recordings, having weekly rehearsals, things like that. I mean, having rehearsals, is very important. Yeah. And I remember in a lot of parishes, we just have a rehearsal just before Christmas, or it's like, well, what about the rest of the year? You without those rehearsals, you won't add new music into the repertoire and things like that. So, that's very important. And we're lucky in this modern age where there is just, there are apps on the phone which can teach you the chant. Probably 70% of the chant repertoire that we use on a yearly basis is found, that can be found on our smartphones. We can put chant tools or there's different apps that you can download which are free, which plays the music, and you can learn. You can slow it down, you can fasten it up, you can change the pitch if it's too high or too low for you to practice.
Isn't the Vatican doing something similar?
Well, yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit. To a more higher scale, to a less humble level.
So,
let's elevate
because
ourselves.
of our new Pope being a little bit more musically able, the institute, the Pontifical Institute of Music, which is in Rome, which is like, I guess, the head musical Academy of Music or Conservatorium for the Catholic Church. Their rector, the actual rector himself, has been putting out little like videos on YouTube and I think on other social media formats as well of being able to sing different parts of the Mass. And this is more towards the congregation than, say, the choir. So it's teaching the congregation how to sing the different amens. So, I think the first video is the In Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. So when the Pope sings that, I can't remember what it is in the Novus Ordo, but then the response is Amen.
Yes.
So, and he shows, the actual chant and then how you follow it and how it actually goes up. So you can see two notes and then it goes up a note and stuff like that. And the same with Et cum spiritu tuo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think the second...
Et cum spiritu tuo oremus.
And then you've got the, the second video I think they've put out is how to sing the Pater Noster in Latin.
Yes.
Which is... Well, not the funny thing is even in the English Missal, it says at the front that the people should know the Our Father in Latin, how to sing the Our Father,
Yeah.
So these are things that are even in the current Missal.
Many cathedrals and parishes will sing one Sunday of the month the Our Father in Latin.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yes. Because the thing is that when you come together, and especially these days where you can fly around the world very quickly on an aeroplane or something like that, you're at an international event, World Youth Day, and many times the liturgy's been in Latin.
It's a unifying language.
Well, that's right. It's the liturgical language of the Catholic, the Roman rite of the Catholic.
Language of the Church.
Because, for instance, when they went to Poland, I mean, how many people know Polish? I mean, it's some sort of Slavic language from over there. Nobody can pronounce it. Full of consonants.
Yeah.
Not even the Pope can pronounce it. So that Mass has to be in Latin.
Yeah.
So that's the language of the Church. So then everybody can come together and they can sing the Our Father together and things like that. So it's very
even
very
for
important.
East and West, Latin is the language of the Church.
Yeah.
Because Church documents are published in Latin.
That's right. First.
There has to be one language at least that unifies.
And the reason
everybody.
why that is because it is a dead language.
It's dead.
It doesn't change its meaning like English. A word can change its meaning from decade to decade. Well, because it is a dead language, the meaning never changes of that word. So the Church puts out a document, so the understanding or reading of that document today is the same as it will be in 100 years' time, because the meaning of that word won't change because it's not a living language. That's the plus side of it being a dead language. Being a living,
nobody speaks it.
Being a living language, words change, as we know so many times in English. A word today can have a positive meaning, and then later on it can have a negative meaning, and then it can be a derogatory term for something decades later. So.
Not even decades later, what we Australians speak down under.
I was going to say, even within my lifetime, I've seen certain words change their meaning. So.
I learned my lesson when I was in the UK in 2013. Spent some time there, and you speak like an Australian. You learn your lesson pretty quickly.
True.
So you learn to adapt to what they call English.
Yes.
And we call Aussie lingo.
Yeah, that's true.
So, it's a very good point that Latin is the same language, a dead language. It's the fact that I won't be speaking to you in Latin and getting angry at you in Latin, and then we pray in Latin.
Yeah.
Nobody speaks Latin.
No.
So it has its unique identity
Correct,
as a
yeah.
language that is reserved for prayer, reserved for church documents, and that unifies the faithful under one language. It's just absolutely beautiful. And other religions have this.
I was going to say, that's even amongst the pagan religions, Sanskrit or whatever, nobody speaks that on a daily basis, but it's used, in religious
Hebrew as well.
That's
right. For
right.
the Jews, Arabic for the Muslims.
Yeah. So
and
no matter where in the world, you'll come across somebody somewhere in Asia, and they're able to speak Arabic because of the religious or their liturgical use within the
Let's now speak about 3 practical tools. We want 3 practical tools.
Okay.
To take action with our faith. What can we do? John wants more practical tools, I think, up there. You want more practical tools? Yes, he needs a tool. He's enjoying it.
He wants a tool. Okay. I guess, as I mentioned first off, is allowing ourselves to be open to music. Because I think it is a science/art. People are a little bit scared to sing and things like that. I think we sort of probably have to sort of humble ourselves to allow the Holy Spirit to sort of work and to sing. We don't have to shout our heads off at mass or whatever, but you have to be participate.
You don't have to be the loudest person. There's always
there are always those who like to sing loud. But I think definitely if we can help when you're just in the pew there to sing the responses or help sing the hymns. It could be just softly or whatever. And I think that's one thing. That participation, which has sort of been, pushed, after the council was being important, and there is an importance for that sort of participation. I guess secondly, is to help and support our priests and musicians in educating those who are or who do have a a talent, because I come across in many parishes that are people who are talented, but sort of never somebody said, have you ever thought of joining the choir or going for those talks that the diocese puts out or something like that. I think that's sort of definitely something that people should be maybe a little bit more proactive in that sort of regards.
So fostering,
yes.
Talent.
Yes, and I think that's sort of definitely
on a parish level.
Yes, and I think that's important. That's something that we've introduced. We do have it's just in its infancy in regards to the organ. We do have like a small organ scholarship where we are sending somebody off to be to learn the organ. They've learnt piano. And they've got up to, I don't know what grade piano. There's a lot of people, they may have been up to something like 7th or 8th grade piano. And they sort of, I've said to them, thought about playing the organ at Mass or whatever. I don't know. I said, well, we can, send you off for lessons and, offer you a scholarship to sort of learn the organ, since you already have a certain ability, keyboard ability, because you have learnt, piano as a kid or whatever. And, we have that sort of just starting at the moment where, we have people learning to play the organ, being able to play the pedals properly. And
with a little bit of a scholarship where it's funded a little bit.
That's right, yes.
To incentivise people.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So, and
it's not something big. You're just
that's
paying
right,
for
and
some
it's something that doesn't cost a huge amount anyway.
You're just paying for some lessons.
That's exactly right. So, and I've spoken to a couple of priests within the Archdiocese of Sydney, which are looking at doing similar things. So they've got problems of, we can't find an organist.
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
well, I'm certainly sure in your parish you've got many people who have learnt the piano, kids or even people who are still young teens or something like that might be interested in learning, the organ. And there are very good. We have a lot of very good organ teachers out there here in Sydney.
Yeah, we do.
And there are some people that are very open to helping and are willing to teach. So yeah, I think that's another opportunity that definitely should be taken up in that sort of regard.
And I think that's important, but that's not the only way to foster talent. But to actively within the parish, within your bulletin, announcing after Mass, people that may have a skill, because there's thousands of parishioners on an average parish level that priests minister to. And there may be people within the congregation that do sing, that have a good voice, or that want to try out, and then may not know how to read notes.
That's
but
right.
They can start from scratch and they can learn. They may, a parish priest may allocate some funding to pay for some lessons, so they can go. I remember when I was involved at the cathedral liturgically, we were sent off to ACU to do a short course on liturgy as some kind of formation for liturgy, growing in the spirit of being a server. Parish priests can do that. These are things to start. So start a recruitment campaign, essentially.
Yes, it's great. And also,
recruitment
there is a lot of things available online and on YouTube that you can start off on the cheap, where you can't afford to be, sending somebody off to a tertiary, institution or whatever. There are different courses that are available online.
YouTube lessons.
I know that I think the American Institute of the American Association. Church Music Association of America, I think that's what it's called. A lot of times throughout the year they'll put chant classes and lessons on for sometimes nothing or just a minimal fee, where there's Zoom classes for people all around the world, or there's somebody that goes methodically through a particular material and will explain something like that. So there are a lot of cheaper ways that you can,
or just YouTube
to do. Yes, or just YouTube.
YouTube has lessons.
Then there are lots of musicians, throughout Sydney. There are people, like myself, or different musicians, say in regards to the traditional mass, to say at Lewisham.
But you're not limited to the traditional mass.
No, but then there are other people like musicians at Belfield, the Cathedral, Parramatta Cathedral, and things like that. There are many musicians there that are willing to help, and different places and parishes. So don't be scared to sort of ask, because I think a lot of times that's what people are sort of scared to ask. Now, I might not have the time to to do something, but I might know somebody that does.
Has the time.
And I've had that, someone come up to me and I said, "Oh, I can't do it, but I know this gentleman. He has the ability to do it. He can do it." And don't be scared to approach somebody like myself and sort of say, either myself or somebody that I know that could do something. So
or maybe somebody like you within Sydney, or a similar scenario in your city or your home parishes could give initial training just for them to get started.
Correct.
And then they pick up. It takes one person, if a priest wants to build an actual choir, to learn and sing the chants. And you know what? You don't really need, what I've noticed over the years, you don't really need 6, 7, 10 people. You can do with 2. You can do with 1. You can have one chorister singing. And then the chorister learns the chants and then maybe recruits one person from the parish.
Correct.
Would you like to sing with me?
Yeah.
Then that person trains the other, and then maybe add another one.
Correct.
You have 3.
Yes.
And the priest can do a bit of singing. And
also too, you have to remember sometimes that these things, it's not an overnight success. I mean, what Lewisham has succeeded, or what we have succeeded in Parramatta Apostolate, is something that's occurred over years.
Yeah.
So people have to sort of be aware of that. You have to start small and slow, and then build up.
Then you'll have a choir of 10, 15.
Yeah, and then your repertoire grows and things like that and stuff like that.
And,
I think you will always have your difficulties. We've got to the moment. We've got to our ability in certain things that we're sort of stuck in that rut, and we're now pushing ourselves to the next level, and and that's through some help of outside people sort of giving us pointers of what to do and things like that. And even myself, I'm also open and willing and asking people who are have more experience and education than myself, and asking them for help. So I think that's one of the things is not being scared of asking for help.
Exactly. Yeah, and you can start small. I mean, if you look at a cathedral choir, you're not going to build that overnight.
No,
it can be a long-term vision.
And also too, you've got to remember that sometimes with a cathedral choir, it's auditioned. They're all musicians. They might be paid or semi-paid depending on what the situation is. So you've always got to remember that sometimes that's not necessarily look. That's what you want to work towards. But you can't expect that to happen overnight.
But you can start with some small things.
Yes.
You build up hymns, and maybe Gregorian chant's not all that hard.
No, that's correct.
It's actually quite simple.
I mean, there are some very difficult chants that even I still will struggle to get through.
But you can start
then
with
there's some stuff
chant.
Which is really simple and easy.
Exactly, that you can sing. The Kyrie, the Glory. Glory to Gloria.
I mean, even Rome produced a booklet called the Graduale Simplex, which I was using for a little while within a Novus Ordo parish. So we would sing like all the propers of the Mass, so like the introit thing, but they were very simple chants. So and then over time we decided, one Mass we'll add in the offertory from the big graduale, the like the full melody, and and over time, I remember we eventually learnt to sing the full Immaculate Conception, I think Mass it was, according to the full. But we started off just doing the from the Graduale Simplex, which is just a very simple form of the chant, and then over years we built it up, and with it, I think we did that within 3 years or something like that. So it wasn't it didn't take that huge amount of time, but it was weekly practices, people, willing and, committing to the choir. And, I think that's, it's important.
Mate, it's absolutely amazing. And get started. If you want change in your parish, speak to your parish priest, or you're a priest. Get started with one person. Build up from 1 to 2 to 3.
Yeah,
build
that's
it from
exactly
there.
right. Yeah, that's how.
Get started.
That's how we started. So
get started. It doesn't have to be something big. Just small steps.
That's
one
right.
at a time.
And every now and again you'll stumble, and things won't go the way you would, practiced and hoped. But you just keep going, and it's all for the glory of God, and that's the thing you've got to remember. It's for the glory of God's glory. That's exactly right.
That's why we sing. It's an act of worship. So, I mean, it's we can keep talking all night. It'll have to spill into another episode, Greg.
Oh no.
But thank you for being with me here tonight and discussing a very important topic that so many people are working on the parish level, and a lot's happening.
Yes.
In a lot of dioceses, and thank you very much.
We are lucky here in the Greater Sydney area that we do have many parishes that do have very good musicians and things like that,
and many building up.
And so it's definitely supporting, helping,
amazing,
suggesting to people that you might hear that have a wonderful voice or whatever. So
thank you so much. Let's continue the great work. So thank you for tuning into the Catholic Toolbox. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your weekly podcast. Go to the Catholic Toolbox. That's where you get your podcast, and find us there and subscribe to the podcast so that you can download it there. Don't forget to go to thecatholictoolboxshow.com. That is thecatholictoolboxshow.com. And don't forget to keep us in your prayers for the show. And thank you for tuning in. I'm your host and founder, George Manassa. Until next week, God bless, take care, and take action.
In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic Toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity.